From the WWNY studios in downtown Watertown, this is Race for the 21st, the Republicans' debate. The moderator of tonight's debate, WWNY anchor Brian Ashley.
Good evening and welcome to the debate between the Republican candidates for Congress in the North Country. Tonight we'll hear from the two candidates vying for their party's nomination, Elise Stefanik and Matt Doheny. In just a moment, Elise and Matt will introduce themselves to you and then we'll ask some questions. But first, let's talk about the 21st Congressional District. It is huge. It takes in 12 counties, and to reach everyone with this debate, WWNY is partnering with WPBS TV in Watertown, Mountain Lake PBS in the Plattsburgh area, and North Country Public Radio. However you're watching or listening to this debate, again, welcome. Now let me introduce the people asking tonight's questions. David Summerstein is the Assistant News Director of North Country Public Radio. Tom Halleck is the anchor and producer of Mountain Lake Journal on Mountain Lake PBS. And Jeff Cole is the anchor of 7 News This Morning and host of WPBS's Public Eye. Here's the order of business tonight. Each candidate will make opening statements, and then we'll begin asking questions. Tonight we're going to focus those questions on 2 areas, national issues and questions that have a distinct local concern. The candidate who gets the question will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will have a minute for rebuttal. If we decide a little more time needs to be given to the candidates so they can talk about those issues, we can do that. It's at my discretion, and I ask them to respect my decisions on timing or rebuttals. Later on, each candidate will have a chance to ask the other a question, and we'll have a lightning round of yes or no questions as well. We have an hour in which to cover a lot of ground, so we hope we can stick to the issues that interest voters and maximize the opportunity for each of the candidates to highlight their positions on those issues. Right now, let's start with candidate opening statements. We flipped a coin before the broadcast, and Matt Doheny will go first. Matt?
Thank you, Brian, and good evening. I appreciate the opportunity that TV7 would host a debate, and thank you, David, Tom, and Jeff, for allowing us this opportunity to talk to the voters of the North Country. I look forward to the next hour to really tell the truth to the voters of the North Country about myself and Elise. As people who've watched TV know that there's been over $1 million of attack ads brought against me over the several weeks here in this campaign. It's really done a disservice to the political process and really hasn't helped the voters of the North Country. In contrast to that, over the last 63 days in a row, I've gone door to door, from Lowville up to Messina, from Rouse's Point down to Ballston Spa in this vast district, listening to voters and getting our message out. And so what I've been telling people at the door is there's a clear choice. Myself, I'm a self-made businessman. Grew up right here in Alex Bay, and with the love of my parents went out and made something of my life. I focus on turning around troubled companies small and large. Right now we've gone through an amazing turnaround at Yellow Trucking, one of the biggest trucking companies in America, and Kodak. You know, going to all those doors have taught me that the #1 issue here facing the North Country is jobs and economic creation. If you want to go ahead and have new life, bring new vitality to the North Country, send a businessman like myself who understands the issue. #2, experience. I've been to each and every one of the 194 towns and cities that make up this great district. I know the needs. I understand the challenges that we need to bring broadband and cell phone coverage to the Adirondacks. We need to reinvigorate the industrial base, not only in Messina but in Ogdensburg, but also right here in Fort Drum to diversify and make sure that Fort Drum stays, that we grow around it. You know, and lastly, look, I'm from here. Grew up in Alex Bay, played hockey and football all over the North Country. My wife, my son, was born here in Watertown. No matter what happens on November 4th, we're going to be right here in North Country resident for the rest of our days. It's that type of knowledge and experience that gives me the insight to go ahead and help lead this district. My opponent, it's a contrast. You know, she's 29 years old and spent 7 years in Washington. She has the experience in Washington and not really as a small businesswoman. That's the choice that voters here in the 21st District will have on June 24th, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to make my case tonight. Thank you, Brian.
Ms. Stefanik?
Thank you to the hosts, and I want to take a moment and thank my primary opponent, Matt Doheny. I'm looking forward to the next hour of the discussion. My name is Elise Stefanik, and I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in upstate New York. And I come from a small business family, a small business that I'm proud to work at today. I was the first member of my immediate family to have the opportunity to graduate from Harvard, to graduate from college, and after graduating, I served in Washington fighting for conservative principles. I chose to move home to the North Country to help my family's small business grow, And last August, I announced my candidacy for Congress, challenging third-term Democrat incumbent Congressman Owens. Since then, I'm proud to say that we've won the Republican Party's endorsements of 11 of the 12 counties and the Conservative Party line, which gives us the best and only opportunity to unite Republicans and conservatives to win this November. It is clear that Washington is broken, and we need new ideas and a new generation of conservative leadership to create jobs and promote economic opportunity, to fight back against President Obama's failed economic policies, to stand up for our constitutional liberties, especially the Second Amendment, to advocate on behalf of our family farms, and to protect our nation's military and our servicemen and women and veterans. I'm excited about where we are in the campaign. We continue to see support and momentum building as we go door to door, as we have volunteers calling Republican primary voters. I'm optimistic that we will win this primary and that we will win this November to bring a new generation of common sense conservative leadership to Washington.
Elise Stefanik, thank you very much. Now it's time for our panel to begin asking the candidates questions. And as the order begins, Elise Stefanik will have the first question, and David Sommerstein from North Country Public Radio will be asking that question. David?
Thanks very much to both of you for being here. Elise, both you and Matt have campaigned actively against the Affordable Care Act. Whatever its flaws, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers have bought private insurance through the act. So without talking about tort reform or medical malpractice or liability, what specifically would you do for the people who have gotten insurance, hundreds of thousands of people, and for the thousands of other New Yorkers who still have no access to health care, to health insurance if they get sick?
I don't support Obamacare. I stand by the full repeal of Obamacare, and I think we need to work together on both sides of the aisle to pursue common sense solutions for health care reform. This is personal to me. My family's small business had our health care coverage canceled as a result of Obamacare. We've seen a 30% premium increase, higher deductibles, higher copays. This is a lose-lose for small businesses, and it's a job killer because we are then faced with the decision, do we absorb those costs or do we pass them along to our hardworking employees? I think I do bring common sense solutions that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. One is allowing health care to be purchased across state lines, which affects our community in the 21st Congressional District. Another idea is letting small businesses pool together to have high-risk insurance pools to help lower the cost of our health care. I also want to give individuals the same tax incentives that small businesses have to write off health care reforms. And when we're talking about modifications to Obamacare, I do support modifications if they were to come up in Washington. One is repealing the medical device tax. It's a job killer. It affects this district. And we also need to get rid of the Independent Payment Advisory Bureau, which is a group of bureaucrats who make decisions about reimbursements.
Mr. Doheny, you have 1 minute.
Yes. Obamacare is not the answer. We do not want to go ahead and nationalize all of healthcare. We don't want to have the single payer system. But what we do want to have is people to have the opportunity to go ahead and have coverage. Look, right now, we need to nationalize. We need to make sure that people can go ahead and buy policies to truly get the insurance effect of actually having a full pool of people. Look, for young people, look, staying under 26 is fine, but we need to have portability. So many people that I've met all over the North Country are just staying at a job because they have the benefits, because of health care. We need to go ahead and allow people to go ahead and continue different jobs, different creation, because guess what? That might be the young woman. That might be the older retired gentleman who's going to create the next business, to create the next opportunity here. So I think portability is a very, very important piece. Now look, there are solutions that we can go ahead and without overturning Obamacare, because look, I can vote. I can count votes. And the reality is until we have a new president, Obamacare is with us. But you discount tort reform, we need to make sure that we get the lawsuits under control. And as like my first act in Congress, I will put before the voters in Congress to make sure that we actually give voters an opportunity to repeal the job-killing medical device tax. That's a job killer. It's against what we need in this district here. Like my policy is going to be very simple. When I go to Washington, first thing I ask myself when it comes to a bill, regulation, is you know what? Is it going to create jobs here or not? And that's what it comes down to.
Thank you,
Thank you, Brian.
Sorry to have to cut you off. All right, our next question comes from Tom Halleck. Tom, your question is for Matt Doheny.
Speaking of medical care for veterans is very much in the news right now. Everyone wants the VA fixed and for veterans to receive good health care. And there is now a deal in the Senate to increase VA funding by $500 million. But Republicans have at times voted to oppose increased health care spending on veterans for things like new VA health care facilities, mostly out of concern about the federal budget. If you're elected, how will you weigh those two competing things, the obligation to our veterans and the need to watch the budget?
Look, that's why I want to go to Washington, to bring businessmen common sense, who's actually balanced budgets. I mean, this is what I do as my professional career. And so when you have the VA, look, three things. We need accountability, transparency, and flexibility. Accountability. People who've done these things need to be fired and removed from the system. No bonuses, getting fired. Number two, transparency. We have to know what the truth is in terms of the wait times. We need to know what is actually going on, and we've heard some terrible reports about that reports are being falsified and the like. Lastly, flexibility, which goes to the budget point. Driving, here in Watertown we do have a clinic, but folks have to drive all the way to Syracuse, the other side of the district, to Albany to go to a hospital. Why don't we allow people the flexibility to actually get their script, to go see their doctor right here, close to their actual provider, whether it's in Messina or Watertown or Glens Falls or Plattsburgh? It's common sense. Now, when it comes to the budget, there is so much fat waste. And this goes to one of my points. We need to go ahead, and I will be an advocate and a spearhead when I'm elected to Congress. Audit every program, every branch. We do it in business. I do it every day in my professional life. Why we can't do that in Washington is beyond me. When we have things that bring no value, when we have so many programs that just stay on because of legislative inertia, we need to go ahead and get those under control. As a businessman, I've done it. I'm willing to make tough choices. Look, Tom, I'm not a political pro. I want to go serve my country. And making tough choices is what you have to do, and you go home and you go back to work. So when I think about the trade-offs, we need to make sure that the VA has flexibility and that we have a lot of veterans in this district that are getting care closer to home. They don't have to take the 2-hour trip to go see their doctor and healthcare provider. On the budget side, when you talk about departments like energy, commerce, education, there is so much fat to be cut that cannot withstand audit scrutiny, and that's what I hope to bring to Congress.
Ms. Stefanik, you have 1 minute.
First of all, I want to thank all of the veterans for their service to our country. I am deeply concerned about their health care crisis facing our veterans across the country, and it is not enough that this president and the secretary of the VA has chosen to resign. The president should look and should have reforms to the root of the bureaucracy in the Veterans Affairs Department because it's not working. I formed a Veterans Affairs committee to help advise me with veterans throughout the district. And I agree with my primary opponent. I think we should absolutely allow veterans to go to private hospitals and private physicians to cut down on those wait times, and it also benefits hospitals who need patients in their bed. I do not support bonuses for any of the bureaucrats who work in the VA department. And this is an example, and this is why I'm not comfortable with the direction that Obamacare is moving in this country. This is why we can't have a nationalized health care program, because we've seen that it doesn't work for veterans. Our next advocate must work to protect all the care and services that veterans have earned after they've signed up to protect and defend our country. And I will be a committed voice fighting on behalf of veterans, and I hope to have the opportunity to serve on the Armed Services Committee to do so.
All right, thank you very much. Our next question comes from Jeff Cole. And Jeff, your question will be directed at Elise Stefanik.
Thanks, Brian. You both are not in favor of bailouts, but let's take the 2008 financial crisis and the bailouts that had to happen after that, or did happen. Some would say it created a backstop, and economists say that the government's action with GM alone saved 1 million jobs. ProPublica.org reports that as of around, beginning of this month, June, the government actually made money off the TARP program and the Fannie and Freddie bailouts to the tune of about $30.6 billion. So Americans as investors got a pretty good return. And as an investor, you want that sort of return. So it kept this Great Depression from becoming, the Great Recession from becoming a Great Depression. Why would you have opposed the 2008 bailout, and how would you have done things differently if you could?
I absolutely oppose government bailouts, and the reason I do so is because of my background. My family's small business. We aren't a Wall Street company. We're a Main Street company. If we fail, no one is there to bail us out. So we need to have an even playing field for small businesses to be able to compete with larger corporate interests and Wall Street. I don't support the bailouts. I didn't support TARP. My primary opponent was working on Wall Street, which is predominantly responsible for the financial crisis. And I believe we need a representative who represents Main Street. I don't think we should have bailouts for big banks when small businesses do not get that same deal.
Mr. Doheny?
Yes, unfortunately, you heard my opponent's answer, and it's hypocritical. I mean, left out was the fact that my opponent actually worked in the domestic policy unit in the Bush White House when these bailouts were actually happening. She was there. Look, I'm dead set against these bailouts. It is against the Constitution. It is against what we believe in the free market. I believe in the free market. I understand how jobs and how challenging it is to go ahead and create them. But guess what? Government coming in and picking winners and losers, government saying we want you to win and we don't want you to succeed, is against the Constitution and violates every notion of fairness that we have in this country. Look, I've heard all over going to the last 60 days, door to door, when do I get my bailout? Why do all the big companies get bailed out, not me? It's wrong, and we've lost confidence. We've lost confidence in this country, in our institutions. Again, the bailouts, whether it was TARP with the banks, whether it was Fannie and Freddie and the mortgages, or whether it was the auto companies. Again, we have a system. It's Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code. Companies that will go through, restructure, refinance, that's what would have actually happened here. We literally stepped in for reasons that unfortunately become political. My primary opponent would probably know a lot better than I, since she was there during the bailouts.
Brian, I just want to jump in here. It's very important for the voters.
Elise, if we can, I think we have a follow here.
I would. I mean, you both are against it. I get that. What's the answer, though? What would you have done differently?
The answer is we need to have an even playing field for small businesses to be able to compete with Wall Street. My primary opponent was working on Wall Street at the time. He actually received deferred compensation from Deutsche Bank, which received over $2 billion of funds that were linked to the bailouts. Those are taxpayer dollars that we should not have used to bail out Wall Street companies while Main Street companies were failing. So yes, when I graduated from college, I had a choice. Many of my classmates decided to go to Wall Street to make money. I didn't make that decision. I'm proud of making the decision to go to Washington to serve under President George W. Bush. I care about public service in this country, and even your own hometown newspaper, Matt, called out the untruthful statements. I do not support TARP. I was not part of the process building TARP. I'm proud of my service under the George W. Bush administration, but I have different opinions, and I'm running to bring new ideas to the forefront.
Okay, Matt, you have 1 minute.
Look, this is DC doublespeak, Jeff. I mean, she was there, but she didn't believe in it. I mean, this is time and time again.
Were you not on Wall Street? You were on Wall Street.
Mr. Doheny,
Brian, could you please?
Mr. Doheny, answer, please.
At the end, like right now, I work for an institution at Deutsche Bank. Everyone knows that. Deutsche Bank didn't get bailed out. Look, the answer to your question, Jeff, is Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code. Companies that go ahead and make bad decisions have to live with their actions. And if you run out of money, you don't have liquidity, you actually had a bad business model, guess what? You file for Chapter 11. And guess the companies, the banks, the insurance companies, and the auto companies that could have actually survived would have survived within Chapter 11. There was a lot of literature, a lot of academic articles written about this. They would have been fine. Our economy would have been fine. See, what I can't stand, part of why I'm running for Congress is to bring fairness back. That, you know what? People need to stand up and say, you know what, just because you have a political insider, just because you have a particular lobbyist, just because you're a favored industry, you get taken care of. So the answer to your question is, let the process, let the usual financial, legal, and practical process plays out. That's what would have actually happened. Simple as that.
All right, let's move on to the next question from David Summerstein, and your questions for Matt Doheny.
Matt, several thousand undocumented immigrants play a crucial role in the North Country's dairy industry right now. Farmers have long called for a way for them to work here legally. Many of these Hispanic workers have been on these farms in the North Country for years. Many of them are very trusted by their farmers. What would you do for the legal status of those workers who are already here in the North Country? Do you think that they should have a path to citizenship?
Visiting over the several past years, family farmers all over this district, you know, from here in Jefferson County all the way over to Washington County. And it's a critical issue. And I ask, why are there folks who aren't American working on your farm? And the answer, unfortunately, time and time again, is because we can't get any local talent to work here. Sometimes they stay an hour, sometimes we get them for a month, it just doesn't happen. And so at some point it becomes a basic business question. How can we run our dairies? How can we run our other farming interests and have the labor supply that we need? So look, if I go to Washington, I'm going to work across the aisle. I'm going to work with any other rural congressman who can say, you know what, we need to have a longer term program. We need to make sure that, especially for dairies, where again, as you know, you need to milk 2 or 3 times a day. That's just the way it is all 365 days a year. So a 3 to 5 year plan where people come in legally, that are totally checked, that are verified, that are all above the board in the system, and not have people running around under the cover of darkness and not being actually, not citizens, but legal here in terms of actually having that program. Look, we have similar things with seasonal businesses, whether it's H-2A program and some of the things for apples and other farming. But we need to go ahead and get this outside of the immigration debate, because I think it's a business issue. Look, agriculture is important. It's a big business, and it's a big way of life here in the North Country. And so having the supply of labor and the people who are here already to make sure that it's a way that our family farmers have the comfort, not only in terms of their operating legally, but also they'll be able to operate their business. Because I've been told directly by farmers, you cut my labor supply, well, we're going to have a real challenge. So in particular dairy, it's crucial, because guess what? There's no seasonality. That's every day. It doesn't matter if there's 2 feet of snow outside or if it's 85 degrees. You need to make sure you're milking the cows and have the labor. So I will work across the aisle, doesn't matter if it's Democrat, Republican, or Independent, to make sure that we have a longer term plan, a longer term process, years, whether it's 3, 4, or 5 years, to have non-citizens working on our farms.
Ms. Stefanik, you have 1 minute.
I hope to serve on the Ag Committee. This is an important issue for this district. Other members of Congress who have represented this district have served on the Ag Committee. I think that's very important. I've traveled to dairy farms across this district, and one of their concerns is their labor source. We need to ensure that there's economic certainty for our family farms to continue growing in this district. And the way that we do that, and I agree with Matt on this, we need to take the H-2A visa program and the ag worker program out of the comprehensive immigration debate as a whole and focus on it and deal with it as an agricultural issue. I am committed to doing so. I think it will provide economic certainty for our farmers in this district, and I hope to be on the Ag Committee to negotiate a 21st century farm policy.
Just a quick follow-up, but what would you do about the perhaps couple thousand Hispanic workers who are here now, some of them have been here for years?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I think it's an important piece of legislation. I think it's going to be one of the first things that we need to do. I mean, the Farm Bill has come, there's a new Farm Bill, as we all know. But we haven't dealt with these loose ends, including making sure that our dairies actually have this type of labor supply. So one of the first bills I bring to the floor in Congress, again, you have to work across the aisle to make sure we get it through a Democratic Senate and have President Obama sign it, is to make sure that we have a 3 to 5 year plan where, again, everything is legal, everything, you can call it a blue card, come up with some new title that actually allows people to have a longer duration here, and so everybody is above board and there's no more, the underground economy would cease to exist in terms of that labor supply.
Ms. Stefanik?
This is an issue that Matt and I both agree on. I think we absolutely need to have a 3 to 5 year program to provide certainty. Once again, this demonstrates the fact that Washington has failed to solve these problems that our communities face, especially communities that have a dairy presence. So I will be committed to passing legislation that takes our dairy ag workers out of the comprehensive bill so we have certainty for our farmers in this district.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we've completed our first set of questions on national issues. Now we're going to switch to questions of a local nature. And again, David Sommerstein will begin our questioning. The first question goes to Elise Stefanik. David?
Elise. Small government tax-cutting conservatives have been deeply critical of transportation projects that serve a small number of Americans. We remember the Bridge to Nowhere. North Country economic developers have lobbied heavily for decades for an interstate highway between Watertown and Plattsburgh. Why should the government spend an estimated $6 billion to build a new interstate through our sparsely populated area when transportation officials agree the nation's existing infrastructure is crumbling?
Well, David, it's a great question. I actually don't support the rooftop highway because of the high cost, and I believe that we need to invest in the infrastructure that we have. We absolutely need to ensure that we have a 21st century infrastructure policy in this country to help our economy grow. My family's small business, we have trucks on the road 5 to 6 days out of the week. We feel firsthand the challenges stemming from our crumbling infrastructure system. So I hope to be a committed voice to invest in what we have, to invest in rail, roads, waterways, sewers, so that we can have a 21st century economic growth. But there's also other pieces that are important to infrastructure, like broadband. We need to ensure that our rural communities have that last mile of broadband coverage. We also need to promote cell cell phone coverage. There's no reason why the entire 21st Congressional District shouldn't have cell phone coverage. This is something that both my primary opponent and I have talked about on the campaign trail, because ultimately this comes down to a jobs question. How are we going to encourage our North Country economy to grow? We absolutely need to invest in infrastructure to do so. I don't think the rooftop highway is a fiscally responsible way to do so. I think we need to invest in other ways.
Matt Doheny?
I'm in favor of the rooftop highway. And if we had the budget allocation, I would certainly be a promoter of it. But I never want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It's like someone who spent a lot of time on Route 11 going from Watertown to all the stops away over to Plattsburgh. It's got to be improved. Why does it have to be improved? Again, every door I knock on, how are you going to create jobs? Well, guess what? If it's hard to get in and out, if it's physically hard to get there, guess what? People aren't going to do it. They can vote, they can choose with their feet every single time out. So that's why we need to make sure that we upgrade our infrastructure. And look, Elise is right. It's not just necessarily roads, it's rails and otherwise. But I spent a lot of time in the 103 towns and villages that comprise the Adirondack Park. And if you can't live in the 21st century, have a quality road, have cell phone coverage, and we all know out there when you're driving from Watertown over to Tupper, you're going to go dark for a bit. We have to stop that, not only for an economic standpoint, but also for public safety. But lastly, these things create jobs. Like, one of the problems I have with Republicans is that they're so busy trying to make bigger points. But again, I pay taxes for the common defense, called military, for courts and police, but also for the common good, which is infrastructure. Like, we need to make sure we invest in infrastructure. Every day that goes by, the North Country infrastructure crumbles a little bit more. We're falling behind. Again, what can we do to create jobs here? That's my first mission. That's the question. That's going to inform my answer on transportation, David.
Thank you, Matt. All right, Tom, your question for Matt Doheny.
Many communities are raising concerns over the millions of gallons of crude oil being transported daily on railways through communities along the shores of Lake Champlain and the Hudson River in the 21st District. It is the same type of volatile Bakken crude that incinerated and annihilated the small town of Lac-Mégantic, Quebec last summer, killing 47 people. Last month, the U.S. Transportation Department issued a safety advisory asking but not requiring shippers to use newer, safer tank cars. Do you believe there should be stricter federal oversight of these virtual moving pipelines? And if so, what regulations are needed?
Well, I'm glad it's a real issue in your neck of the woods, up in Plattsburgh, up and down Lake Champlain. I've had several meet and greets where honestly the rail cars moving oil has become the issue of the debate. So for me, I think it's two or three common sense things. Number one, believe it or not, this is why we need the Keystone Pipeline. Because guess what? That oil is going to be pulled out, whether it's Bakken or whether it's up in Alberta. That's going to get moved around the world. And if you send it down the Keystone Pipeline, which is already safe, already been going all the way down to Oklahoma, it lessens or removes the need to go ahead and move the oil by ship from all the different ports of the Great Lakes, which go up on the other side of the district through the St. Lawrence, through the area where I grew up. Or, guess what? In Albany and other ports of call, they're going to be planted there and up by rail. So let's actually use something that's common sense that actually helps economically and also environmentally. Let's use the Keystone Pipeline. Number two, to the extent that we still have to have this, we do need greater federal oversight. Because we saw the tragedy, up in Quebec, that many, many tens of people, were negatively impacted, and obviously the devastation and destruction. Again, being a common sense conservative. Number one, when you're going through dense areas, slow down. I know it's a very simple point for a congressional debate, but when you have these high-speed trains going through, slow down when you're going through Plattsburgh. Slow down when you're going through Peru and up on your way to Quebec. Number one. Like number two, we need to have inspection. Again, it's different when you're carrying goods or when you're carrying non-flammable, non-perishable items. This is different when you're carrying the heavy crude that Bakken and Alberta oil sands produce here. That's where the federal government does have a role to oversight, because guess what? Look, I've seen an oil spill firsthand. I was a young person. If people watching remember, in 1976 we had an oil slick in the St. Lawrence. I mean, certainly it's why Save the River was born and a lot of other environmental organizations up and down the St. Lawrence River. You have to be beyond careful to make sure we don't have that type of tragedy, both environmentally and from a practical local standpoint. So that's what I think, Tom.
All right, Elise, you have 1 minute.
This is an important issue. It's an important issue to Willsboro. I've spoken at length with my hometown supervisor, and we actually have rail cars going at high speed right through the center of Willsboro. And I have a number of concerns. One is the local communities, our local fire departments, our local emergency services don't have the resources to deal with the if situation, if there is a catastrophic incident. So I want to ensure that there is a federal role for potential cleanups if there is an issue that happens. I agree with my primary opponent that we absolutely need to make the Keystone Pipeline legal now. It's shameful that this president has continued to kick the can down the road despite the fact that Democrats and Republicans have come out in support of the Keystone Pipeline. I absolutely think there's a federal role to regulate trains. We need to slow them down, especially as they're going through the populated parts of this district. So I think this is another issue that we agree on. This is an issue that's important to Willsboro. It's an issue that's important to the Lake Champlain region of this district.
All right, our next question comes from Jeff Cole and for Elise Stefanik.
In 2000, the International Joint Commission started a 5-year plan to come up with a better way to regulate water levels on Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River. 14 years later, no decision has been made. People are frustrated. The levels are still based on a 1958 plan that many argue is destructive to the environment. As a member of Congress, where would you fall? Where would this fall on your priority list? And what is the best plan to balance out regulation and recreation?
This would be high on my priority list because it's important to our environment, but it's also important to our economy in this district. I've spent a lot of time reading the 2014 plan that's been put forth after meeting with many stakeholders, environmentalists, local business owners, small businesses throughout the district, and homeowners in this region of the district. We need to solve this issue and bring some sense of certainty. I think we should allow the water levels to return more to their natural place, which will help tourism. It will also help grow our economy in this district, and it will also help protect the environment. So this will fall high on my priority list. This is an issue where I hope to work closely with our local and state leaders to solve, because once again, you said we're still not seeing any type of movement forward. This is an example of government not doing its job. We need to have some sense of certainty, and the way to do that, I think, is bringing environmentalists, small business owners at the same table and getting back to the original natural levels.
Mr. Doheny, you have 1 minute.
I'm from Alex Bay. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. It's really about life. And so, like, you grow up in these communities, you understand it's tourism. And we have the most beautiful body of water, the St. Lawrence River. And we need to make sure that we have the same recreational opportunities, fishing, boating, et cetera, et cetera. And look, plan with the old BV7, now Plan 2014, it has to come to fruition. Like, we still want to have some control over the levels, but we want to have as much natural ebb and flow as we can on a given year. Obviously, we're subject to rainfall, snow, and the like. Look, this requires true leadership, true national leadership. And I'll be that point person. Everybody watching out there knows that there'll be no greater advocate for the St. Lawrence River than someone who spent their time growing up in Alexandria Bay, who was deeply invested in the river, who knows how important it is economically, environmentally, and from a practical life sense here. Look, I've spent many hours talking to the people that save the river. And we agree, this plan needs to get done. So we talk about how are you going to get it done? Well, look, IJC obviously is international. You have to be able to work with foreign representatives in Canada and make sure we get this treaty to the point where we can actually have these new water levels and stop with the 1955 levels.
All right, thank you very much. Continuing our questioning now with David Summerstein. Your questions for Matt Doheny.
Matt, small hospitals in the North Country are struggling against a combination of declining patient traffic and what they say are inadequate federal reimbursements. So without an infusion of taxpayer money, what should be done to keep those hospitals strong? Or should we expect fewer but bigger regional hospitals in the North Country?
Well, I've gone all over this region, and over the past several years, I've been to each and every single one of the hospitals in this 21st Congressional District. You know, certainly here Carthage and Watertown with Samaritan and Clifton Fine and Ogdensburg and Gouverneur and Canton, Potsdam, Messina, and Malone and Saranac Lake, and I could go through the entire district. And unfortunately, time and time again, I ask them, what are your two biggest challenges when I meet with administration, physicians, nurses, and the like? Number one, the federal government's not working with us. Number two, we have a hard time recruiting and retaining talent. Doesn't matter if it's Lewis County General or all the way over in CVPH in Plattsburgh. And so what can you do? Well, again, bringing common sense business perspective to being your advocate in Washington. At some point in time, it's about helping the people on the ground. Now, like you say, infusion of capital. Well, sometimes you can go ahead and get into a new bucket, acute care centers. I mean, Alex Bay has done that. Hudson Headwaters over on the other side of the district gets new status to go ahead and create new opportunities of how the federal government treats it. But the real travesty is that you have to go through this alphabet soup. It becomes its own language. And there's great things going on all over this district in terms of healthcare. Look, right here in Fort Drum area, it's very unique. We don't have a hospital on post. One of the few in the country that actually has the community-based hospital. That's a great way, and I think it's going to be a model for the rest of the country and the rest of our Army bases around the world to use that type of situation where the physical plant is not on the base, but it's in the community. So again, that's one common sense way, again, as a business person, understanding how we can go ahead and bring the resources and utilize different non-traditional ways to improve our hospitals. That's what's going to have to happen on the ground. And look, at the end of the day, how are we going to truly improve our hospitals? More people working, more jobs, therefore leading to greater growth and opportunity. That's going to help our hospitals more than any other particular thing. Certainly I will help in with recruitment and all those things in terms of keeping the talent here, because again, we want to have first-class professionals. We want to make sure that the specialists are here all over the district and all over the North Country. But at the end of the day, we need to grow the economy. That's why I'm asking for the 21st voters just to give me a chance.
All right, Elise, you have 1 minute.
This is a deep concern of mine. I've met with many of the hospitals in the district, physicians, nurses, administrators, and one of the challenges they face actually stems from Obamacare. They are struggling to get the reimbursements. They are continually seeing increases in their liability costs to fight back against medical malpractice lawsuits, and we're losing jobs as a result of it. Hospitals are not only important for our health care for our residents of this district, but they're important for our economy. My family business knows it firsthand. We have products that are built in these hospitals. We need to ensure that each and every one of our hospitals in our local communities and the larger hospitals in this district have economic certainty and that they have an ability to balance their own budgets and provide jobs and high quality health care. I too hope to be someone that's able to help recruit top of the line physicians for our hospitals. It's something that we need to understand that we're in a competitive marketplace and we need to make sure that our best and brightest doctors come here and we provide the incentives for them to do so. And I also think we just need to ensure that when we talk about hospitals in this district, we talk about how important they are to jobs and creating jobs. Our biggest employer in the Adirondack Park is Adirondack Medical Center, so it's important to be a voice for our hospitals in this district.
All right, thank you very much,
If I
Elise.
just add one more thing, is that with a hospital small like Alex Bay or large like CVPH or what Mr. Carmen runs here in Samaritan, they're doing great work. And they've already started to evolve their model and working regionally and collaboratively. You see that whether it's Lewis County dealing with Syracuse hospitals, with CVPH in E-Town dealing with Burlington hospitals. That's already happened. So again, they're doing great work. It's a federal point person's job to help them along. That's really what the job is.
Elise, did you want to add one last comment?
No, I agree with.
All right, thank you very much. Tom Halleck, your question is for Elise Stefanik.
Security along the northern border is a balancing act, rooting out threats without compromising the critical flow of commerce and visitors between northern New York and our largest trading partners in Quebec and Ontario. Do we have the balance right? And if not, what changes should be made?
That's a great question. My family's business does business across the border with Canadian suppliers of our products that we sell throughout the 21st Congressional District. So we understand how important our trading partnership is with Canada, but there is a balance we need to strike right here between the security to ensure that we have a secure border, but also to continue to encourage economic commerce. I believe we've struck the correct balance in Canada, but I think nationally, what concerns me is that so much of the debate dealing with our border issues focuses on our southern border. I hope to join the Northern Border Caucus to help advocate on behalf of our northern border to ensure that that economic commerce, which is so critical to our economy in this district, continues to flourish. I also am concerned about drugs coming across the border. This is a crisis in this district, and we need to ensure that we have a balance between security but also economic commerce.
Matt? I think it's a little too tight, to be honest with you. I grew up in Alex Bay. I spent a lot of time, playing hockey in Eastern Ontario, Brockville, Prescott, so on, Kingston, so on and so forth. And the flow is just not what it used to be. And I think it has a negative impact on commerce. And from two respects. Look, tourism is so vital. It doesn't matter if you live in 1,000 Islands or over in Lake Champlain or in the Adirondacks between. It's very, very critical. We need to make it easier to go on the border, to go over the bridges in Messina and Ogdensburg and Alex Bay, or the different checkpoints in the northern border, obviously over to Champlain. Look, we need to go ahead, and part of our recruitment is the massive amount of people in the Ontario area, whether it's Ottawa or Kingston or Toronto or in Quebec. in the Montreal suburbs. That's how you've been successful in Plattsburgh to re-energize. It's essentially a U.S. suburb of Montreal. The more difficult it is to get in and out, again, like I said with my transportation infrastructure question, the less chance that people want to come invest and continue to reinvest in our area here. So again, the standard is, will it improve jobs? Will it create a better opportunity for us to live here in the North Country? I think we need to have a little bit easier egress and ingress. Again, part of it's physical upgrades, but part of it is in terms of coming up with programs to let people coming out easier.
All right, our next question is from Jeff Cole, and that question is for Matt Doheny. Jeff?
No decisions have been made on whether or not it's going to be built, but Fort Drum is one of 4 locations for an East Coast missile defense facility. Would you be an advocate for the facility, and what environmental concerns might you have regarding it?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I would be a dogged advocate for missile defense to be right here in Fort Drum. And one of our key advantages in the area is the fact that we do have Fort Drum. I remember September 11th, 1984, when then Congressman Dave Martin announced a new light infantry division was going to be headquartered right at Camp Drum. Changed my life. It made my life and so many other people like myself who were 14 at the time in school a better place to live, and we see the benefits decades later. Again, how do you continue that? Well, we had great physical build-up. We've had great construction. Common sense is to bring military additional forces, whether it's a new brigade or in this case, missile defense. I'm 100% in favor of it. I will do everything I can, hopefully as a member of the Armed Services Committee, and to be the point person, just like, God rest his soul, Congressman Martin was back in the early 1980s, to bring that type of vitality and continuing the physical presence right here. Look, we're dead serious. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'm going to go and have one person that's dedicated only to military affairs, whether it's veterans or in this case, Fort Drum, to make sure that the on-the-ground resources that are going to help all the great people who are making sure that Fort Drum not only continues, but also grows. Missile defense is square within that mission, and I will be a dogged advocate of that in Washington.
Ms. Stefanik?
Fort Drum is the single largest economic driver in this district, and I absolutely will be a strong advocate on behalf of Fort Drum. I have a proven record of speaking out against the sequester and the across-the-board defense cuts that are gutting our nation's military, and I plan on continuing to do so. I would also advocate for Fort Drum to be the missile defense site for the East Coast. It will help grow our economy, but it will also ensure that Fort Drum continues to grow and flourish. I, too, hope to serve on the Armed Services Committee. We need a strong advocate on behalf of Fort Drum to make sure that it continues to grow. It's so critical to our economy. It's critical to our way of life in this district. And ensuring that missile defense, and is one of the sites that's considered for missile defense, will be one of my goals if elected to represent this district in Washington.
All right, we're going to ask one more question, our local round from David Summerstein for Elise Stefanik, and I'll ask the candidates to keep their answers somewhat short.
Elise, you've called for the gun control laws to be repealed, like the SAFE Act in New York. That would mean in New York that AR-15 assault rifles and large capacity clips or magazines could once again be sold in New York. Why is it a good idea for civilians in our state to have firearms of that kind that are modeled after military weapons?
I don't support the SAFE Act because I believe in the Constitution and I want to protect our Second Amendment rights. I think we need to have a conversation as a country about mental health issues and violence. My heart goes out to the families who have been affected by the tragedy in Newtown, the tragedy that happened earlier this week in Oregon. But we need to talk about violence and mental health. We do not need more gun laws in this country. If the SAFE Act were in place, it would not have stopped those violent acts from being committed. So I want to be a strong advocate for our constitutional liberties, especially our Second Amendment rights that are under assault by Governor Cuomo.
The answer is because it's against the Constitution. This is as fundamental a right as we have. There's a reason that the First and Second Amendments are the First and Second Amendments. And so, look, at the end of the day, I don't want to have a situation where it seems like only bad guys have guns. It's just common sense. Look, I'm 100% against the SAFE Act. It is unconstitutional. At some point, someone will actually hold that. But what do we actually have to do to make sure that these legislatures, doesn't matter if it's Albany or Washington, have to stop trying to take away our rights and our money? It's just common sense. That's what I'm asking for, an opportunity to have just a common sense businessman to go to Washington to make sure laws like this don't happen. And again, to everyone out there, I'm a lifetime NRA member and I will do whatever I can in the quest to make sure that the SAFE Act is overturned. Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you for your answers, candidates. Now it's time for each of the candidates to ask each other a question. We're going to allow Matt to ask the first question. You can ask your question and hear the answer, but we're not going to allow rebuttals in this round. And then it will be Ms. Stefanik's opportunity to ask Mr. Doheny a question. So Matt, your question to your opponent.
Thank you, Brian. Elise, I've spent a decade and a half of my career working hard to go ahead and create and save jobs. Companies like Yellow Trucking, where we've saved tens of thousands of jobs. Kodak, where we're going through the process of making sure that companies stay in upstate New York. And several local businesses to create jobs that are so vitally needed here. You have experience. You're 29. You've worked in the Bush White House. You worked in a neoconservative think tank. You worked on your own blog, and you worked on presidential campaigns. I just want people to understand, can you call yourself a small businesswoman?
Because I grew up in a small business. When I was a kid, I saw my parents risk every dollar they had to start our family business. And we're proud. We may be a small business, Matt. We are certainly not a large business, but we proudly employ people in this challenging economic times. We work with small business customers throughout the 21st Congressional District. We work with manufacturers in the 21st Congressional District. We don't sit on corporate boards. In fact, we don't have a corporate board. But most small businesses in the 21st District don't have corporate boards. I'm focused, and my family is focused on every day making ends meet so that we can hire an additional person, continue to grow. So yes, our business experience differs, but I believe that growing up in a small business based in upstate New York, dealing with small business customers throughout the 21st District gives me a better understanding about what our economic challenges actually are on the ground.
All right, we're going to turn the tables now. Ms. Stefanik, you have the chance to ask Mr. Doheny a question.
Okay, I'm going to take a different tact, Matt. I know there's been a lot of negativity in the race, so I wanted to ask a friendly question.
Sure.
We've been very busy on the campaign trail, and I know we don't have that much personal time on the side, but I know that what I like to do in my personal time is I enjoy hiking, I enjoy skiing. I grew up skiing on Gore and Whiteface. I like reading and cooking. So I wanted to get to know you a little bit better personally. What do you like to do in your free time?
Well, and it's a wonderful question, and I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I wish some of your DC allies would ask more, questions like that as opposed to, tear me apart on camera. But as you know, Mary and I had the blessing of our lifetime, right? Declan was born just almost a year ago in 2 weeks, and it's been the greatest joy. So certainly, I used to be a hockey player and do all those kinds of, usual things. But, what we'd like to do is literally just hang out with Declan. And as you know, and you've been working hard as well, traveling a lot. And unfortunately, I don't get to see our little guy very much. So, but I appreciate the kind question. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That was a different question than we may have expected this evening. You've heard each of the candidates on a variety of issues, both national and local, and now we're going to give them a chance to answer some questions based on the lightning round. Perhaps a little bit more lighter than some of the serious questions we have asked you before. We are going to ask you to keep your answers short, one word if you can, but we will try and make it a variety of questions and a variety of topics so that our viewers will get some insights into the kinds of things you like or the kind of positions you have taken on a variety of issues. So we will begin with David Sommerstein, and he has a question for Elise Stefanik.
Do you support same-sex marriage?
I believe it's a states' right issue.
Matt?
Agreed.
Tom?
Another policy question. Do you support medical marijuana?
I do. It's compassionate.
I don't support the legalization of marijuana, but I support medical marijuana.
Jeff Cole?
Pro-life or pro-choice?
Pro-life.
Look, for me, I've said it before, I think it's a personal choice, but I'll get a 100% pro-life voting record in Congress.
David?
Do you support hydrofracking as a method to obtain natural gas?
I very much do.
Yes, I do.
Would you support a third bridge across Lake Champlain?
I would.
I would as well.
Common Core, in favor of it or opposed?
I don't have those.
Opposed.
Very much opposed after you hear the stories.
David?
Have you ever milked a cow?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Both of them. Do you take your Michigan with or without?
100% with. You got to load it on.
I take it with, too.
You both know. Very good. All right.
Mets or Yankees?
Yankees all the way.
Yankees, although I do live with a big Boston Red Sox fan, though. So that's tough. That's my wife.
In hockey, St. Lawrence or Clarkson?
We're very excited. You know what? That's a toss-up. I don't even know.
That is tough.
That is tough. I mean, I'm psyched that the Clarkson
stand.
women won the championship. Wow. There you go.
I like both too. My brother grew up playing hockey, so I was a hockey sister. I just like any hockey teams.
I guess it's St. Lawrence because growing up I went to St. Lawrence hockey camp, so it puts that. But President Tony Collins, please do not send me the email. I know it's coming right now. Sorry, Tony.
That may have been the toughest question of the night. Downhill or cross country?
Downhill, all the way.
Downhill.
If you're not elected, will you run again?
Myself? No.
Maybe.
That was a one-word answer. David, any other questions?
No.
All right. Well, let's conclude the question part of our debate tonight, and let's move on to the closing remarks of our two candidates tonight, for Elise and Matt, and basically ask them to wrap up their opinions tonight and make their case as they head towards the primary on the 24th. Matt Doheny, you go first.
Again, thank you to our panelists, thank you to you and all the voters and all the watchers out there, whether it's on PBS, North Country Public Radio, or here on our CBS affiliate. Again, I'm Matt Doheny, I'm from Watertown. I grew up in the North Country. My son was born here. My wife and I live and make our life here. I'm running very simply. I want to make the North Country a better place. And right now, after 63 days of going door to door to all the different communities all over the North Country, it's very clear. Our biggest challenge is to make sure we have economic growth and opportunity, jobs, to make sure that we can live, our kids, our grandkids can live right here in the North Country. I have a proven record of success. Look, I'm a self-made businessman. I understand how challenging it is to create, save, and to maintain jobs. It's what I've done in my career. It's very hard. So look, when you see these ads, I mean, with my friend and colleague Elise Stefanik's friends in Washington, D.C., trying to rip me apart. They spent millions of dollars attacking my personal character. Just say no. And the way you say no to these people is by voting for me. All over the country, people are sick of Washington. They're sick and tired of the same old stalemate, the lack of compromise, the political point in scoring for no particular reason. You have an opportunity to change the course. Again, there's only one House race in the entire country that these people, Karl Rove and my friend and his friends, are all here on behalf of Elise Stefanik. It's right here in the 21st Congressional District. Right here in the North Country, you can make a very clear statement and say to those people, enough. We're not going to buy this seat. You're not going to go ahead and change our minds. We want to go with someone who understands jobs, who lives here, and more importantly, understands what the issues are and can make life a little bit different. That's what I'm asking for the voters of the 21st Congressional District. So if you're Republican and watching, when you go out and vote, and I hope everyone does on June 24th, keep in mind there's only one businessman. You heard my opponent's experience. It's all DC based. If you want to fix the system, if you want to create economic opportunity right here in the North Country, I'm just asking for 2 years. A House seat comes up every 2 years. Give me the opportunity, and I promise I won't let you down. So I kindly and respectfully ask for your vote on on June 24th. Thanks again, Brian. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Elise Stefanik, you have 2 minutes for your closing.
Thank you to the hosts, and I want to thank Matt Doheny and you, Brian, for this opportunity to talk about the issues. I entered this race for purposes bigger than myself, and the campaign trail can be quite frenzied, but I had a moment to pause last week. I received a letter from a young soldier born in Queensbury who is currently deployed in Afghanistan. And in his letter, he wrote to me how he's been following the campaign from afar, and he's looking forward to voting for a new generation of leadership that's reflective of his generation of leadership. That was a moment that made me pause. To think about real public service, which he is doing every single day, fighting on behalf of American values. The reality is I can only run for office because we have those brave young men and women protecting our country. So I want to take the time to thank them. And I also am running because I want to ensure that that same very young soldier, when he comes back here, that he gets the care and services he's earned. I want to make sure that jobs are available for him and his future children. I want to make sure that if he wants to start a business in this district, he is able to. This primary is a clear choice. If you're tired of politics of the old way, if you're tired of the negative campaigning that my primary opponent has done in every single previous run for Congress, then vote for a new direction. If you don't think we need another representative from Wall Street and we need more of a Main Street sentiment and mentality in Washington, I hope I can earn your support. And if you want someone who can win this November, to move this country in a new direction, to fight back against President Obama's failed policies, to stand up for our constitutional liberties and protect our nation's military, I humbly ask for your vote, because I'm the only candidate who can unite Republicans and conservatives in order to win this November. I'm so excited about where we are on the campaign trail. I feel the momentum building every day. We have support for new ideas and new conservative leadership, and I humbly ask for your vote on June 24th.
All right. Well, it's hard to believe that we've finished up most of an hour here with our two candidates, Elise Stefanik and Matt Doheny. We want to thank them for taking time on their busy campaign schedules to take the time to come here and offer up their opinions and answer the questions that our media panel has. So thank you to both of them. I also want to again thank our media panel, David Sommerstein, who is the Assistant News Director for North Country Public Radio, Tom Halleck, who is the anchor and producer of Mountain Lake Journal on Mountain Lake PBS, and my colleague Jeff Cole from 7 News This Morning and host of WPBS's Public Eye. Now a reminder, if you are a Republican, the primary vote is coming up, and it's coming up in just 12 days on June the 24th. I'm Brian Ashley for WPBS, Mountain Lake PBS, North Country Public Radio, and 7 News. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. We hope it's been instructive. We hope it's been informative. We hope you will go out and vote. Good night.